move on to topic. Well, I guess our first official major topic. We are kind of finally going to close this chapter on the TV show Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Thank
uh,
goodness.
episodes 5 and 6, the season finale. So, I mean, we don't have to exactly touch on everything about episodes 5 and 6. We can kind of, I'd like to think we can kind of pick and choose, seeing as how the show's kind of it. But I don't know. Just overall, I mean, what did you think? I mean, what did you hate? What did you like, if
This
anything?
show was pointless, man. Like,
I'm not gonna show too much B-roll, like I'll because I know this is probably heavily
yeah,
copyrighted. I'll
I
show.
don't know. I mean, there was definitely some missed potential. Not that I was sure exactly what they could have done with the show to necessarily make it better at this point. Like the first episode, I know we all talked about, we all liked for the most part. 'Cause, it's just kind of revisiting the
I like
characters.
the first two.
Well, neither one of them really got too deep into where it was really, really going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the problem is I never really felt like it was getting to anything of importance after a while. It's just, I mean, or really the majority of the show was this big, long escort mission with baby Leia, and that is not the most exciting premise for a show. It seemed like they just wanted to end up with their big battle between Obi-Wan and Vader. That was their end game. So
Mm-hmm.
they're like, okay, that's the show. How do we get to that point? And they had all this other stuff baked in with the Riva story and then the Leia stuff, and none of that is that interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think they handled any of the characters all that well. Obi-Wan for most of it. I know they were playing he's an old, distraught, kind of out of touch Jedi, and we've seen that before. And what was it, The Last Jedi? So,
Mm-hmm.
and at first I was saying that, I feel like they're handling this better. I don't know. I mean, Obi-Wan didn't really do anything of worth or merit. He definitely didn't feel like Obi-Wan from back in the days. He didn't seem like he was strategic by any means. His fighting capabilities didn't really even come into play till the end. Like, he felt very much like a shadow of himself. Maybe that's what they wanted him to feel like.
It
But
didn't seem like it didn't seem like he really went through anything or learned anything that would change him in any way. It just makes sense that I don't know. I agree with you. To me, it didn't feel like he really had an arc.
yeah,
It felt like he's in the
nobody.
same position that he was at the beginning, at
Yeah,
the end. You know what I mean?
literally he ends up in the same place that he began,
Yes.
and I think that's the
Yeah.
biggest problem, and that was always going to be one of the biggest problems with this show. They couldn't really do too much with any of these stories. They can't kill off anybody because you have to start with Vader, you have to end with Vader. Obi-Wan
You know
has
what has to happen. Yeah.
yeah, they're bookending it, and I mean, technically, that was one of the issues I think with the prequel trilogy is you knew how that prequel trilogy had to end, right? You had to have Anakin turn the Vader, but there was a lot more room there to flesh things out, tell some stories that hadn't been seen. This was just so constrained. There were so few episodes to really do anything, and those episodes they focused on other stuff that I don't think was of importance. People are going to argue back and forth on, if Riva is a good character or the rationale for why they added her in. I
She
don't,
wasn't good. She wasn't terrible.
it didn't,
Somewhere in between,
my
I
point
think.
is it took away from the main character of the show, which should have been Obi-Wan. This never, I don't want to say never, it very rarely ever felt like an Obi-Wan show. The focus was placed on Leia, was placed on Riva, was placed on almost everybody else but Obi-Wan, so he got very little, honestly, in relation, screen time, or at least valuable screen time where he did anything of importance. And I felt like he was spinning his wheels most of the time, just
Yeah.
waiting to get to that final battle. And that's not even touching on to some of the poor decision making that
Yeah.
he was even involved in. Hiding Leia in his coat was the stupidest thing I had seen in a long time. I don't
I
know.
thought it was dumb, and then I came around and thought it was so dumb. I kind of enjoyed it. I don't know.
Don't don't
it was
try
bad.
to
Yeah.
apologize for that. Or it was a poor. What kind of strategic sense does that make? And here's the thing: Kenobi is a general. He is someone who is high ranking, is strategic,
Yeah.
in basically a military organization through the Jedi. You think that is the most strategic option, is to hide this little 10-year-old girl who's wiggling around in his jacket, and nobody in this Empire hangar is going to catch on to that? That
He should
just
have. He should have been on her shoulders instead. And her little
at
feet
this
like
point,
underneath,
I don't know.
Austin Powers.
The show has several moments like that that don't make a whole lot of sense. It feels fairly contrived. Like the show is just, okay, we have to get to this moment, we have to get to this next moment, and they don't really care how they get there, no matter if then they do some weird wonky, rationale for how they get a character from point A to point B. They just want to get to that setup, and usually the setups don't pay off, at least in my opinion.
I think the problem is I don't know where the transition was, but the problem is that Star Wars is nowadays, no, it's very dumb. Like I don't get any like real sci-fi vibes from it anymore. Like there are times when like certain things happen where I'm like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like I feel like in what was it? Was it The Last Jedi where they did the faster than light travel through the other ship?
Yeah, the Holdo maneuver.
Like even though it was dumb, that was one of the first times I remember in a while seeing Star Wars where I'm like, okay, that's kind of a neat sci-fi idea or event.
Don't get me started on that, man. That broke so much. Like
I know.
Here's my thing. I've never thought of Star Wars as sci-fi. It's a fantasy to me. Like
it's more fantasy. Okay.
It's in a sci-fi setting, but when you think about, you have these magical wizards basically in space. Like it always felt more fantastic than it ever did sci-fi. I mean, the ships and stuff are just there as kind of, a way to set up this world and this environment to make it seem,
if you view it that way, then shouldn't that for you allow some wiggle room for stupidity and nonsensicalness?
Okay, and I have given wiggle room.
Or you just think it's too far? It's so too far of the edge.
Okay, there's one thing to have, like, weird things they can do with their mystic Jedi powers, and then there's a whole second thing that you think these characters, intelligent characters who have shown to be intelligent, would just make stupid decisions. That's not having fun with it. That is making decisions that hurts the character and how they're set up. And here's the thing, Star Wars has always had stupid, silly stuff. It's not like Disney all of a sudden has made it. I mean, at its core, especially since the prequel trilogies, this has been, in many ways, a kids show or kids movie trilogy. They sell toys. That's a big focus on it. I mean, you go back to episode 1, Jar Jar. I mean, most people hate Jar Jar for various reasons. He was comic relief and did stupid stuff, but rarely did I think he broke the lore or the character development of somebody. He was just this weird off the wall thing.
To sort of defend the prequel series, even though I agree they're not great, I will say the one good thing about those is, like you was talking about before, about how we know where it has to go, where it has to end. Yes, you're right, the prequel series did that as well, where you knew where it had to end, you knew where characters were going to be. But at least I feel like with the prequel series, I feel like it was super entertaining. Like there's a lot happening on screen. There's some more fun happening on screen, in my opinion, than some of the more modern Star Wars. I just feel like it was just more fun. I mean, obviously everyone points at pod racing, and then you had the arena thing in episode 2. 2, yes. I was gonna say 5.
And we're gonna feel pretty different on this. I am not the biggest fan of the prequels. I do not think they were super fun in majority. I hate episode 2. I think it's the most boring movie to watch.
It's bad.
It's not even, it's just bad. I just find it boring. They focus, huh?
Waterworld looked cool.
Yeah. But even that I thought was drawn out. To me, like, a lot of that got very political and sometimes a little overly serious. It just dragged out with the politics and got boring to me. In episode 3, I thought it was just a little contrived. The only one I actually really liked was episode 1. I guess what I mean by the prequel trilogy is doing a better job in a way is, and it's not even just the movies, it's the expanded, lore around those movies. They introduced characters that mattered. Like in episode 1, Qui-Gon, I thought was an awesome character. He's one of my favorite Jedi mentors in the whole series. Darth Maul, awesome villain. I mean, a little one note, but I know they expand upon him when you think about, was it the Clone Wars TV show? And honestly, I haven't even watched that whole thing. I feel terrible for it.
I'm the same way. I've always wanted to.
But I know just that fills in so many gaps, too, of, the friendship and history between Obi-Wan and Anakin that the movies don't even get into. So what I mean is that time frame, that whole segment of shows and movies and whatnot, did a lot to expand the world. I mean, even though, yes, you knew where they were going to end up, they did a lot to make that journey to that point still worth it. This show, kind of connecting between episode 3 and episode 4, does nothing. Like, what does this show do or add that is of any importance?
In fact, it attempts to like re-dig up those same vibes and same in the same style that the others movies ended. It attempts to like just I've said it, I think we said it off camera, but to me, the show is very redundant. There are a lot of like, and I guess Star Wars has always been like that. Oh, a fourth Death Star, you know what I mean? Oh, it's the fifth time it's been back, you
Well,
know what I mean?
they haven't always been that way. That's been, I think, there's been more redundancies and callbacks for the sake of fan service in the recent years than there have been
Yeah,
back in the original trilogy
I just mean
days. But
redundancy has always been like a talking point when it comes to Star Wars, or that's
I don't think
for a
that
lot of people it is.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think in the recent Disney years, yes, because I
Yeah.
mean, Force Awakens is basically a New Hope, and so a lot of what they've done in the past 3 movies and most of these TV shows, sure, there's been redundancy. If you go back to the Lucas time, I think there's far less of that. So I don't want to say that redundancy is just something that's at the core of Star Wars, because I don't think it really is. I mean, this show certainly has some, but my point being, there's just nothing this show does besides try to give you some fan service, introduce characters that don't really amount to a whole lot of anything. If anything, it impacts lore in negative ways. Like, I still go back now, and it hurts. Like, they didn't even do anything to resolve it. The whole fact that Leia knows who Obi-Wan is as a kid, and not like some passing thing like, oh, I've heard of Obi-Wan. She was her freaking savior in this whole thing. That's not something a 10-year-old kid is going to forget.
Come on, Phoenix. Han Solo talked to her and specifically told her, "Keep this a secret. Do you ever tell anyone that about what
Han
you just
Solo
went
did?
through?"
Yeah.
Obi-Wan. I say Han Solo.
And I think what bothers me about it, unless they really are planning a season 2 to this, which I don't really think they are, and I could be wrong, I have not read into it or if they announced it, but the point is they made no attempt to even recognize that, which makes me feel like these writers didn't realize they made that mistake when they made the show. Because, this show was made before they started getting all this feedback about it, and nobody caught that was, in my opinion, a fairly glaring issue.
I've heard multiple rumors that, like, there's nothing, you're right, though, there's nothing, like, written in sand as to what's happening. Like, there's people think there's supposed to be a season 2, people think Reva's supposed to get a spinoff show. There's so many, like,
what would a season 2 do? Like, this season was pointless. What's the second one going to do? I know they had the whole thing where Obi-Wan found the frozen Jedi underneath the whatever it was, like in the freaking Ember or Amber, I don't know. So I don't know if they have any interest in touching base on that.
They really never utilized that, really. That was just a thing that brought up and disappeared.
Yeah, I think something about that will pop up in some other show, maybe that Andor show or something like that. I don't think it's going to be another Obi-Wan show.
I got a suggestion for a good show. Obi-Wan finds a new place to live, builds a home, but then I guess I'm getting this from the Jar Jar skit. I was gonna say, but Qui-Gon won't ever leave him alone, and he just like bothers him for the rest of his life.
It's like it's an Odd Couple kind of situation where he has to live with Qui-Gon's ghost.
I was thinking midway, I'm like, oh, that's basically the.
And I tell you, that actually would have been, I think, that was one of the things I was hoping to see out of this show, was more of Qui-Gon showing up in, Ghost Jedi form and, like, training Obi-Wan to do it, because that's actually a pretty big thing.
Oh, he looked old, though.
Well, yes. Okay, and Hayden Christensen didn't try to play a 20-year-old? Like, come on. I don't know. Like, I feel like the stuff they could have potentially utilized, I think, would have been interesting. They barely touched on, or just completely threw out the window, and they just went for some basic fan service and accomplished literally nothing. The Reva story arc, I'm sorry, doesn't work for me. Like, okay, so she was a youngling and she was trying to get back at Vader, but her approach to doing it, her motivation to be mad at Obi-Wan or being mad at the Jedi, she basically went through and helped the Sith or the Empire kill off all these Jedi that she was supposed to be avenging by killing off Vader. Like, how is that a morally good thing for that character? And that she can just redeem herself at the very end just because Obi-Wan's like, oh, I'm glad you didn't kill Luke. Good job. You're all cool now. No, like, she was a bad person that made bad choices. I'm sorry.
She's kind of a wasted character.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they'll use her in something. I mean, I know people have been talking about she might show up in the new, what is it? It's not Fallen Order. What's the Jedi Survivor? That's the sequel to Fallen Order?
Yes, I think it's
Yeah.
Survivor. Sorry, as
So
of
I think I
that point.
heard could be a cameo in that because that deals with the Inquisitors, the Third Sister, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So maybe she'll be something in that, which I don't mind that. I don't mind this character existing. I mind that she existed as a primary character in this show. Like this show should have been Obi-Wan. They should have given him some real character development. Like you could have him be the old kind of begrudging Jedi at the beginning, but he had to get somewhere, and I don't feel like
Mhm.
he even at the last episode when he has his final battle, I guess he got somewhere, maybe because he saw a glimpse of young Leia's face and that just lit up his heart. I don't know, but it didn't work for me. None of it did.
Before I lose the idea, I guess kind of really thinking about it, I don't. Again, I don't think the show was totally pointless. I had some. There were. I'd say I enjoyed 3 episodes, which
Okay,
is what, three
don't
out of
think
six.
enjoyment. When I say pointless, I mean it adds nothing to the
I
lore
agree
of the
with that.
canon.
I'm saying
So
I enjoyed it, but I'm not saying I agree it didn't add anything.
okay. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you can enjoy whatever. I mean, for those who have watched this show and have gotten something out of it where they enjoy the moments, I mean, the final battle with Vader and Obi-Wan, that was cool to a certain extent, but it
Maybe I'm
doesn't
at the
add
point.
anything.
Maybe I'm at the. I've been saying to you for years how I'm able to disconnect Star Wars, and I consider Star Wars just 3 movies that were made in the late '70s, early '80s, and everything else since then for me has been interesting, fan made stuff. So maybe I'm at the point where I'm like, I can totally disconnect. I can just enjoy this for what it is and
And
not
if you could do it, it's
consider it
fair,
canon.
but that's not what it is. Like, here's the thing. For those who care about
Disney considers it canon because I
well, it
hear.
is, and I mean, I can respect what you're trying to do because if it helps you enjoy the franchise more, awesome. And I love the original trilogy far more than any other aspect of Star Wars. But what I like about a franchise like this is it grows and
Continuity.
well, continuity, but you add more stuff to it. It grows, you learn more, and it's supposed to enrich the entire thing. It enriches the story, enriches the characters, makes moments that are coming down the line feel more impactful. So, yes, does it take away from the original trilogy? No, the original trilogy is still excellent. Okay, and if that's all you care about, sure. Does that mean that you shouldn't care about all the stuff they're adding? I don't think so. I mean, this is canon that is impact moving forward, unless in 10 years Disney sells off Star Wars or scraps their whole processes. We're throwing everything out the window and starting from scratch again. And
Mhm.
even then, that's even more of a kick in the the gonads because it's just I don't know. I have to look at everything at some level. I like
Yeah.
to piece it all together because I like lore. I like things to work, and I like it to enrich characters, and stuff like this matters. So
hmm
I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
I guess before I lose my thought again, what I was referencing before is that even though I enjoyed aspects of it, I guess the ultimate kind of critique, in my opinion, towards this show is that as a whole, I would say this very much feels like content filler. This feels like Disney looking at their oh, we got Disney Plus. This feels like something that was kind of concocted up quick, pushed out quick.
It did feel quick,
It
which I
feels
thought was weird because this, I mean, it's Obi-Wan. This is like, in my
yeah,
opinion, should have been the character like, okay, they're really putting some effort into, more so than Boba Fett or any of that. And some of the CG was bad. The writing
yeah.
wasn't great. Like, that was, I don't know. I don't get why this
It
felt
doesn't.
rushed.
You're right though. It doesn't. The show, in my opinion, doesn't feel like when you throw the name Obi-Wan onto a TV show or movie, this show doesn't feel like it was handled like it was Obi-Wan. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like it should have been handled a lot better, and it does feel kind of quick and pushed out. And then it especially feels like content fodder because I actually got this idea is from Red Letter Media, and those guys enjoyed it, but they also were super critical. And like a big point that one of them made is that this show is the ultimate. It's more proof of content filler for a subscription service because each episode kind of drags you on. There's not really each episode has like aspects that give you just enough to keep you wanting to see the next one. But ultimately, the thing you mainly want to see the most, it will not happen until the last episode. So it kind of gives you a reason to keep your subscription service or keep subscribed, keep tuning in just to kind of see what's going to happen. And
Mm.
that ultimately, I feel like if subscription services like Disney and stuff other services, if they get to the point where the people that are subscribing are starting to notice that too much, that's a problem. You know,
Oh man, and I don't disagree with that. But I mean, that is how all these subscription services work, right? They all are trying to make sure there's enough content to keep coming back time after time. That's what Netflix is struggling with right now. Like, if it wasn't for Stranger Things coming back, I think Netflix would be like bottoming out right now. Which, by the way, that comes out tomorrow. So,
oh shoot, really? Well, people complained about Stranger Things about that too, about it being too extended, each episode too long. Get to the point, you know what I mean?
I don't know, but Stranger Things covered a lot more ground and did a lot more in its series. Like, I felt like every episode accomplished something for the most part. I did not feel like that with Obi-Wan. Like, I felt like Stranger Things and those creators, at least at this point, they have a story to tell. And regardless if you think of how good or interesting it is, it's moving that direction. This Obi-Wan show, I felt like they just padded it with stuff just to pad it with stuff. It definitely felt too like there were some agendas being pushed for certain characters and stuff like that. Just, I don't know. The more I think about this Obi-Wan show, it feels more and more like wasted potential, and for what it ends up being is a complete wash. Like, if you really care about the cool parts in the show, go on YouTube, look up the final scene between Vader and Obi-Wan. That's what people care about anyone.
Yeah, that's all everyone's going to take away from this show.
And that's got a few cool moments, but even that on its own, like, doesn't add anything. Like, it doesn't add anything besides, I guess, Obi-Wan being a little more, he's let go of Vader more, let go of I keep wanting to say Hayden, let go of Anakin. He's accepted that Anakin is truly dead. But here's the thing, that was my understanding at the end of episode 3. Like, Obi-Wan thought Anakin was dead, right? He left him to die, pretty much. It's not like
I would think after Anakin killing children and then burning on the ground yelling, "I hate you," I would think that would click in Obi-Wan's head of like, okay, this guy's off the deep end.
And that's how I feel. Like, if you had left off with only seeing Obi-Wan at the end of episode 3, or seeing it
essentially,
or seeing it at the end of this, he's still in the same point. Like, he is literally the exact same character. He hasn't learned, done anything new. He's just older in this one. This story did nothing. I know at this point we're probably spinning our wheels, so I won't keep saying it, but that's my, I think, biggest critique after all this. It was wasted potential that added nothing to the overall lore or canon to Star Wars. Some fan service, a couple of cool moments, a lot of really odd moments that, in my opinion, actually break canon in some ways, and I don't think it's worth a watch. And I like Ewan McGregor. I honestly like Obi-Wan, especially in the prequel trilogy, is one of my favorite characters throughout that whole thing, and it's not worth it. So
yeah,
and I guess Hayden looking like 40 years old. They should have done some de-aging technology on that guy. I'm sorry.
I really wish he would have said something that like would have been the total like Steve Buscemi, like, "Hey there, fellow students," or what's that mean?
Hey there, fellow kids.
Fellow kid.
Well, I guess what I find so odd is they put so much effort into doing like young Luke. Like, they've done deep fake technology to get him working The Mandalorian and Boba Fett. So they have this young Luke Skywalker, and they couldn't add a little bit of de-aging technology onto Hayden so he doesn't literally look like a 40-year-old man when he's supposed to be playing a 20-something-year-old guy. Like, that was so jarring to me. Like, I know a lot of people were happy to see that throwback with Obi-Wan and Anakin fighting up at the Coruscant or the Jedi Temple. That was more jarring to me than anything else, because I'm like, there's no way this mentally as a picture can fit back into my nostalgic memory of that timeline, because he looks so old.
Well, here I am. I'm going to play Defender again. I agree in terms of how the CGI and the decision to do that, I agree, was awful. I will say what I did appreciate about that one particular aspect of that episode 5 is I kind of liked how they were kind of using that scene and that moment to kind of reflect how Vader was kind of acting towards Obi-Wan in the current time. I mean,
the scene wasn't necessarily bad. The fact they didn't de-age him at all was like that adds a jarring layer to it. Like, and it's not like, I guess I never get this. Like, Disney's not lacking for funds. That's clearly technology they have and can do. They've done it before. They've done it in Marvel movies. They've done it in Star Wars movies.
I don't know if you know, but I think Disney just this last month or two struck a deal with Stan Lee's children, where now I
He
think
can
they're
come
gonna
back.
start.
Yeah, yeah.
He's gonna start
They
being in
can
like future
raise
Avenger
Stan Lee
movies.
from the dead. Oh man, poor guy. Let him rest.
Listen, guys, when the ChazmaN is dead and gone, if I have a fan base, don't reuse my image
Oh, I'm
or
gonna have you in like a little anime avatar above all my videos. Oh,
I just like it's like I
oh,
don't
it's
know.
a whole
Just
thing. Owning properties
let
to
me be
dead
dead.
actors, like there's
Yeah.
it. I mean, there's some videos out there you can probably look. Like Disney's making a whole industry out of buying up the licenses to own the rights to these people, and it's pretty
Hmm.
creepy. That's getting into a whole another thing, but um, I don't know. I know you're trying to defend it, and I appreciate that you enjoyed aspects of it. And I think part of it is you probably have more of a fondness for the prequel trilogy than I do. Like I know you've talked about you like episode 2 more, and episode 3 you really like. So I think
Yeah.
the fact that you
I
got
like the
to
prequel series to an extent.
yeah, and I think that you got to probably see some of those character interactions a little more that hit on your nostalgia may have helped you, I don't know, feel a little more accommodating to what they're trying to do in this show. For me, though, I don't have that same
Well,
nostalgia.
even further beyond the original series or the original trilogy, the trilogy hit when I was like a very young person, so I am very definitely affected by those movies nostalgically. Like those movies hit like what 99, I was probably like 7 or 8 when the first one came out, so like they
Like
hit me
episode
when I
1
was
and 2 and all that.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, I could be biased, because of they hit me at that time.
Yeah, and
I was
that's
playing
fair.
with
Yeah, I mean, nostalgia, I mean, it's a heck of a drug, man. So, I mean, I definitely
yeah.
understand the power of nostalgia.
Like for you,
Um,
you would probably already seen the original trilogy before those and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean I wasn't born during the original trilogy time, but I grew up watching those before, episode 1, 2, and 3 were ever a thing.
I just
I
mean more
was
than me. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was like middle school when episode 1 came out, so I still had some childhood nostalgia for that one. But then there was
Hmm.
such a big gap between that and episode 2. I was getting out of high school when episode 2 came out, and it just didn't hit me the same way. So I think by the time I got to
Yeah.
the Hayden Christensen time frame, I was already over it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. To
So,
each their own.
so I did have just a couple things I wanted to mention from my notes before moving on. I thought it was kind of cool seeing Obi-Wan do his two-finger point. I don't know. Part of me was like, oh, he did the thing. Yeah, with the sword, whatever his thing is.
Hmm.
Uh, but I did no high ground joke when Vader was above Obi-Wan in the
I
hole.
was waiting. Maybe it was a little too
I
on the
was
nose
waiting.
for him,
I
but
was waiting for Vader to be like, for him, even for him, just to like snicker and say high ground. You know what I mean?
hmm
Something small like that. I don't know. I felt like that. Like you were saying, it might have been too on the nose, but I don't think it was too on the nose. I felt like that was the perfect moment for.
I would have appreciated that at least just for the meme portion of it.
Oh, that would have been a huge meme. People would have loved that.
But I'm sure, yeah. But I get that probably is a little too fan servicey. I mean, honestly, in retrospect, I probably would have hated that long term, but it would have been fun in the moment. I agree with that.
I think it would have been more fun, but that's just me. I guess that was actually Ian McDermott as Palpatine. I thought it was a
Mm.
fake one, but I guess Ian came out and said no, that was me. I guess Ian and Liam Neeson both had the opinions that they were just like, no, if they're gonna bring back those characters, we want to be a part of it. We don't want anyone else playing us, which
Yeah.
is admirable. And anything else crazy? Not really. I mean, I felt no connection to baby Luke. I could care less if he
They did nothing
survived the
with
fall
them.
on the rock.
Well,
I was just like, okay,
they didn't do anything with them at all. It was all about Leia. But
yeah.
which even
So there you
Leia's
go.
character doesn't really grow or do anything. Like
No,
she starts out spunky, ends up spunky. So like,
she gets a gun holder,
like
gun sash.
none of the characters get anywhere. I guess the only character that has a real arc is Riva, and her arc isn't even all that great. But at least she has some arc where she grows and makes a change. And she's not even the main character, or shouldn't be the main character to the show. So something about that just rubs me kind of the wrong way.
Yeah, I would say if you're gonna want to watch this show, don't. I mean, I don't want to say don't. I mean, I'm sure someone will enjoy it, but I would just say if you want everything, all the good stuff, go to YouTube and type in Obi-Wan show Darth Vader scenes.
You can
Just a
save yourself
compilation
a
of
lot of time. Like
yeah.
it is hard for me to recommend this show. Like, I normally I'd be like, well, if you already have Disney Plus and you got time and you're a Star Wars fan, sure, watch it. You might get some fun out of it. But I don't think there's enough there. There's a lot of episodes that I think there was very little to enjoy. I thought, if anything, it just dragged at times. And as I said, it doesn't add anything to the overall narrative of Star Wars. I'm not going to keep spinning our wheels, but go find highlights on YouTube. You'll be happier.
Type in all the Vader scenes from this show, and you'll be happy.
Yep. So I'm done.
All right, guys. That's it. No more. We're done with Obi-Wan.
Now you got to watch Mandalorian. I will talk and praise Mandalorian if you ever start back and watching that. That show's worth.
I'll only watch it if you're willing to talk about them on here. I'll watch.
I will talk about Mandalorian. I know we're way behind at this point, but that show's so much better.
I'll talk about anything for content. I'm at that point.
Anything. Okay. Watch that. Go back and watch, that show's worth it.
We'll go back and watch the first season of Teletubbies, and we'll talk about it.
Tiddlywinky. Was it Tinky Winky?
I don't remember. I don't know. Lala, Tinky Winky. I don't know. Move on.